So this is day 2 of How We Build From Here, and today we're looking at who for, having done what with yesterday. So as a reminder, because we heard this from a couple of speakers yesterday, that UN Habitat and World Bank figures predict that 3 billion people will need new housing and basic infrastructure by 2030. And Peter Clegg also showed us yesterday that we have no shortage of trained architects in some parts of the world. My own face and video have just appeared on this screen, which is really disorienting. So Peter showed us no shortage of trained architects in some parts of the world, and we also know there's much professional eagerness to do good through design, and yet so much development that happens around the world still seems not to be doing anything particularly to meet the needs of most of the world's population. So this session, responding to the question of who for, is focused on people and planet as the ultimate combined for whom we build. And we're going to be looking at that particularly this morning through the lens of one particular program, for which I'm going to hand over to Parvinder Marwaha, who's Architecture, Design, Fashion Program Manager for the British Council. And Parvinder's work has a focus on supporting ethnically diverse and young voices, the role of women in design, and responding to global challenges such as climate change. So I'll leave Parvinder to describe the gender and climate program between Bangladesh, Pakistan, and the UK, on which INTBAU is a very proud collaborator, partner, and ally, and all sorts of other things besides. And we're going to bring 3 voices into the conversation as well, all virtually from Pakistan, Bangladesh, and India. Parvinder, over to you.
I'm probably going to go into this disorientation too, but thank you so much, Harriet. I'm really pleased I could be here today, and I think it's going to be a brilliant event the whole day, so glad you guys can make it. I also want to thank the back end at INTBAU and at the RSA, because obviously Yasmeen and Anupama are joining from Pakistan and India today. So hopefully tech will work out. So as Harriet said, I'm Parvinder and I lead on design at the British Council, and I look after our connections with Europe and South Asia. I also lead on some of our global programs, and I'm really interested in the design landscape becoming more equal, diverse and inclusive, and inevitably for me that really does link to things like gender and climate, because women are actually the worst sufferers of climate migration and displacement. So I'm deeply interested in representation and designing out inequalities. So when I was studying architecture, I wasn't exposed to many women in the profession, and definitely not women of color. So when the opportunity came to think about this session, we immediately thought about Yasmeen Appa, and I call her Appa I will call her this through the whole thing, because I learnt that it was a sign of respect in Pakistan. So I followed suit, and she does kind of treat me like her honorary granddaughter. And then there was Anupama, who I was also quite privileged to work with on a project to do with water conservation in India. And then there's Marina, who's done some incredible work in Bangladesh and who couldn't be with us here live today, but she sent us a presentation and sent her apologies. So we're really pleased to have gathered the architecture trio of dreams, in my opinion, and here we are. So Harriet spoke about a gender and climate program we're working on together to support the empowerment of women in architecture and design, and I just wanted to tell you a little bit about it. So it started quite literally with Yasmeen Appa and I having a call about her work in Pakistan and how she created a number of YouTube tutorials for communities to build their own shelters, toilets, and cookers. She said that the goal was for them to watch them on their smartphones, from identifying materials of bamboo, earth brick, and lime to building their own homes. So I was fascinated and if it would work. And Yasmeen always said she's very bad with technology. So I was also curious about her YouTube potential, really. Anyway, turns out that she did do a good job. And we discussed if Yasmeen Appa could pilot this with women specifically and look at the barriers there might be and the opportunities to develop it. And then she said she could do it anywhere, with similar materials and in disaster-prone areas. So I said, how about Bangladesh? And she said, yes, definitely. That's very typical of Yasmeen. So her organizations, Heritage Foundation Pakistan and Zero Carbon Eco Center, led the program along with INTBAU's Pakistan chapter, and then entered BRAC University, based in Bangladesh, under the help of Dr. Zainab, who I hope has been able to join with her students today. And we started a 2-year program on working with women in villages, young women, young female architects and students from both countries to test and adapt some of Yasmeen Appa's designs. And initially the project aimed to test the capabilities of these online tutorials and the adaptation needed for different countries and climates, and to remove barriers for women to build from sourcing to cutting to lifting and building these structures. And as a result of the project, several new resources were created and over 25 institutions became involved, with wide impact in both countries. And some of the really nice moments include women being given official accreditation in universities as being part of this program. And a personal, quite emotional moment for me when I was in Pakistan a few weeks ago, when the young female students were building these prototypes in both countries. And we had a huge live screen and we could see them put the roof on. And, you know, there was a real connection. It really showed that they are able to go through this entire cycle of construction, which is usually quite male-dominated. And technology was a huge aid in connecting those countries. We're going to share a film about that later today. The most recent development has been INTBAU joining under the leadership of Harriet, so thank you, and bringing students from both Pakistan and Bangladesh to the UK in May, along with UK students, to live build one of the structures and a cooker called the Chula in Granary Square. So we hope you can all join us then to learn more about the program, and we'll host about 10 days of activities, talks and workshops, and you'll be able to see these women working together to build these structures. And Irshad, I see you there. Hello. I saw Irshad. He'll be talking later, and he's come all the way from Pakistan, so a very warm welcome to you. So now I'm going to hand over to these amazing women, starting with Yasmeen. So Yasmeen Appa was the first woman to qualify as an architect in Pakistan in 1963 after training in the UK at the Oxford School of Architecture. She founded Heritage Foundation Pakistan and Zero Carbon Eco Center, and is the chair of INTBAU Pakistan, has done some phenomenal work to save structures, city streets and the villages in Pakistan. After the Kashmir earthquake in northern Pakistan, she ditched her architectural elite work and now works as the architect for the poorest of the poor, and I know she'll be happy I described her this way. She has many accolades to her name, including the Jane Drew Prize, and recently she was given the first honorary degree given to a woman in 158 years of its history at the Politecnico di Milano. And she told me she thinks it's because the board were all women, and I agree. She has a strong mission in working with communities living in disaster-prone areas, and her work now centers around how everyone can build their own shelters and save themselves despite what disadvantages they might have financially, because Pakistan is rich in growing resilient materials and with very skilled people. And recently her work was exhibited at MoMA in New York, and she's written a number of books with still more to come. And she tells me I need to stop taking her time so she can actually finish them. But it's difficult to let go of Yasmeen Appa once you meet her and work with her. You'll only hear a small part of her amazing repertoire today, but at 81 years old, she surprises me every day, and she nearly calls me every day, or I call her. So thank you so much, Yasmeen Appa, for being here with us today. You are a star in many of our eyes, so I'll hand over to you to share your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Parinder. I'm sorry that you listen to so much of what I do. When you come to my age, then there's, I guess, if you come to listen to that, then you have to bear all that. So I'm so sorry about that. But very kind of you, Parinder, to say such nice things about me. And so, greetings from Pakistan. It is so good to be among INTBAU friends again. So, hello, Harriet, and hello, Jules, and everybody else there, and also the whole INTBAU family. It was only a little over perhaps 2 years ago in November of 2019 when we were together at the Zero Carbon Campus at World Heritage Muckley. But, it seems such a lifetime ago, and so good to be here with all of you, even though virtually. So thank you, Harriet Weinberg, for inviting me to join INTBAU World Congress 2022 and to Pavanda Marwaha for creating a panel of South Asian women architects. She was careful, Pavanda, to pick a different generation, huh? A retired architect turned humanitarian barefoot, such as myself, Marina, a practicing star architect, very well known today, and Anupama, the young award winner, who you'll also hear and see. But I think all the three of them, all the three of us responding to the challenge of transforming the architects in a really a changed world from when I was trained to practice architecture. For me, it is clear that I need to utilize my design skills in developing alternatives for those who are marginalized, particularly women in the global south. For the last decade and a half, I have sought inspiration from heritage and vernacular traditions of my country to see how architecture could be a means for providing both social and ecological justice. In my work, I have attempted to find ways to provide housing and livelihoods for disadvantaged sections on a mass scale, all the while utilizing ways not to hurt the planet. It is for this reason that I have concentrated on the delivery of zero carbon structures and using locally sourced materials with little or zero greenhouse gas emissions, as well as targeting the SDGs or Sustainable Development Goals. In the light of climate change, rising disparities, and increasing poverty levels, today I would like to discuss three concerns related to rights-based improved lifestyles for the majority. And we have to think of rights of the people all the time because this is, I think, what we are here for. At this juncture, the issues and problems for the wealthy do not really interest me at all because I know that large-scale transformations can only be achieved by working with the other 99%, and certainly not with the 1% who have accumulated the most wealth. They will never do the right thing. So may I have my first slide, please? Because the topic was very provocative. So it says, so for who? And for me, it is a mass of general public and particularly those living on the borders in the global south that are my concern. So number one is climate migrants and marginalized sections using barefoot social architecture or BAZA for self-sustaining and self-reliant communities through four zeros. Zero cost to the donor, zero carbon, zero waste, leading to zero poverty, which I know is the SDG 1. Number two, urban population suffering from urban blight. So, Baza methodologies for transforming urban cores to create livable environments through heritage centered, climate smart eco enclaves and circular economy. And number three, rural migrants in burgeoning cities. Now we need to reverse this migration trend through Baza rural uplift programs. We have to concentrate on the rural areas also, thus preventing congestion, minimizing stress on infrastructure, and reducing slum communities. So if you please have the next slide. In the various programs that we have undertaken, I have tried to utilize the tenets of barefoot social architecture or BAZA. It is a stratagem that I have devised with which, among other aspects, targets the four zeros that I have mentioned earlier. So number one is maximizing the potential of existing barefoot ecosystem. It's huge in every country, in most of South Asia and especially Sub-Saharan Africa. Something like 80%, I think you could easily say, are really part of this barefoot ecosystem. Drawing upon heritage, tradition, and local wisdoms. If we do all that together, I think I feel we're on the right path. Secondly, socio and eco justice. Humanistic architecture has to be promoted, which should foster pride, dignity, and well-being, and preventing depletion of the planet's resources. We have to be mindful of all these issues. Number three, delivery of unmet needs, the host of unmet needs of the poor that we can't even think about. And so we need to train people in the self-building, in co-building, and affordable products for unmet needs of BOP, which, as I know, is bottom of the pyramid, and especially women, because they're really neglected all the time. And fourthly, low-tech, low-impact approaches for shrinking the ecological footprint using green skills and sustainable, locally sourced materials. So let's look at the slide with climate migrants as to what I think we can do. So for climate migrants and the marginalized, my attempt is to enable each family to attain 4 basic elements. There are just 4 of them, which I believe is their right, and they must have them. An affordable, safe, self-built house, which can be one room, it can be a one-room house at a cost of maybe just £120. Washroom and sanitation at about £60. Low-cost portable water and clean cooking place or self-built earthen Pakistan chula, which is again very affordable. It doesn't cost much at all, and people do it. The housewives do it themselves. And so next, let's go to the next slide, which shows that you have to avoid displacement, which carries an enormous economic, social, and emotional cost, especially for women and children. There's one slide that's missing. If maybe you can click, we'll get the last little image there as well. Thank you. So in Pakistan, we suffer from 2 major disasters, floods and earthquakes. Therefore, in the context of my country, all structures must be flood and seismic resistant. So for withstanding floods and rising waters, in addition to flood resilience, we need to provide refuge until waters recede. And you see the top slides, they all are elevated, or they're on stilts, or they can be floating. And we need to provide refuge until the waters recede. It may take months at a time, and they are all displaced, and there's no reason for them to be displaced, because with architectural design, we can find solutions. So I've designed these low-cost, zero-carbon, floating and elevated structures, as you can see. Then for earthquake resilience, we need structures that will assure safety of life. Normally, it's buildings that kill people, not really the disaster, because if the buildings are well designed and they are, they can be seismic resistant, then people will not die. And that's the most important element that we have to think about. So they are earth and bamboo or bamboo prefabricated structures that I have designed that have survived earthquake jolts or have undergone the shaking table test. And the 3 that you see at the bottom are the ones that are really earthquake resistant. On the right, the last right bottom slide that you see was built by architects and other volunteers, student volunteers in Islamabad as part of the INTBAU Pakistan program. So it is possible for everybody to actually build these, and they change wherever the context might be. This is the beauty of these materials, that you use them and then everybody has a chance to modify them and do them. So this is what I feel can be done for the poor, for the marginalized sections, and for the displaced. And then we come to the second important sort of aspect, which is low carbon urbanism. So if you see in the next slide, for urban areas, my main concern is the urban blight that has engulfed our cities. I show you only a glimpse of those eco-urbanism, of how eco-urbanism will provide us the solution. I'm pleased that Irshad Ali Sodar, Deputy Commissioner, Administrator of Karachi South, is physically with you today. And so it's so good that he's able to represent us. And he will be able to discuss this aspect in greater detail. Irshad is a partner in the Climate Smart Heritage Centre Regeneration of Karachi's historic core. He is an outstanding officer of Government of Sindh and has made immense contribution towards the successful implementation of this project due to his sensitivity towards urban issues and deep interest in the project for its completion. He wants to really, I think, change the whole of the city of Karachi, and won't that be good if that happens? So very quickly, you can see on the left that the area that it suffered from dilapidated state of buildings, visual environmental pollution, unregulated vehicles, pushcarts, etc., unhealthy, untidy environment, urban flooding, and urban heat islands are there all the time, and lacking ownership. Nobody feels that they own the place. But as a result of our eco-urbanism principles, today the area has transformed, which you can see on the right. It has got zero cement, zero steel, and now there is zero pollution. It's a humanized environment. It has enhanced biodiversity. There are birds, etc., and butterflies. Dense forests are now there for clean air. There's no urban flooding, no heat islands, and elusive element of ownership and pride are emerging. And even my historic buildings that were neglected are being actually cleaned up by these shopkeepers themselves, who never knew that they they were sitting with this immense treasure and reservoir of heritage that we possessed in Karachi. So this is what can be done in cities, even in a worst such a state as Karachi is today. So let's go now to the rural migrants. That is my third point. So this is my third concern, the unchecked rural to urban migration. Now, as various studies show, cities will house 68% of the world's population, imposing extreme stress on urban centers, which are even today unable to cope with this influx. So these, of course, as you know, they include job scarcity, increased crime, increase in poverty levels. Almost 50% migrants estimated to be women and girls, and nobody pays any attention to those. Then there's hostile urban environment for women. There's double discrimination. I mean, women suffer from discrimination all their lives, but it's doubling of it as women and as migrants both. So they really suffer. We have to see that they do not get displaced one way or the other. And there's the rise in domestic abuse and violence. There's proliferation of slums with overcrowding, poor housing, lack of social and physical infrastructure. Today, my city, Karachi, has more than 50% of its population living in slums. And we need to really change that somehow. So let's look at my solution, which is to uplift villages, and we need to reverse this particular tide. So maybe in the next slide, we can see that efforts can be made to release the pressure on urban areas through rural uplift programs. And this is something that we've done with Baza, applying its principles. Entire areas could be transformed and made livable. So if you see that by creating reasonable living conditions and trainings and skills for livelihoods, this mendicant community of beggars has acquired a reasonable quality of life. If you look at the left, there are many women who've participated in this, and the slide on the left in the middle shows how they lived earlier. And then then the bottom slide shows how it could be transformed by just with partnering with communities, and we can work together where they will take equal part in everything. And then on the right, there are lots of livelihood opportunities. We have so many crafts, we have so many ways of handling and so on. And those are all, if they're trained, they can do it all from, making little bowls and ceramic things. To the bottom, you can see this young woman at the bottom slide in the middle, making these recycled shoe wear, the footwear with the rubber, waste rubber and so on. So a lot of things are possible even in these areas which are supposedly without any resources, and we need to see what they are. So in our pilot for mendicant communities consisting of 230 women, men and those suffering from disabilities, there's a whole large percentage of women is 51%, and even disability with disability is about 15%. We were able to train and do the hand holding through something called the Barefoot Incubator for Social Good and Environmental Sustainability, through which we do the training. And these were trained in various skills based on low-tech procedures and low-cost products, which they were able to market to fulfill unmet needs of the poor. It was found that just before COVID lockdown, 70% rose above the poverty line within 12 months by marketing products in surrounding poor communities. So it's just the poor that buy the various elements, various products of the poor, and even that way they can make money. So if I can just give you the example of our Pakistan Chula stove icons, which is a World Habitat winner, at least a couple among them have become millionaires as barefoot entrepreneurs by providing guidance to the rural housewife at a charge of less than £1. In the process, Champa, who's a wonderful icon, this villager who's totally non-literate, who has helped build 35,000 of these earthen stoves, she has earned 7 million rupees or 30,000 pounds in about 5 years, which is a princely sum for somebody who once earned only 12 pounds per month. This shows the potential of the barefoot ecosystem that comprises at least 80% of 220 million of my own compatriots. So you can see the market is huge. So it is my belief that climate resilient architecture and eco-urbanism using Baza tenets will lead to social and ecological justice, thus fulfilling the needs of majority of the people inhabiting our planet without hurting it. Thank you so much. Thank you for your patience. I hope I didn't intend to.
Thank you so much, Yasmeen Appa. That was incredible. I hope everyone enjoyed that. And Irshad, you've got a task. Even if you didn't want to do it, she would make you. So, yeah, and I've actually recently been able to see the street that Yasmeen converted, which was incredible, and also Muckley Village. And I know Harriet has also travelled there. Okay, so now to our next speaker. I'm so grateful that Marina sent a presentation through to share with us. Her work is incredible. She's been very generous in trying to participate today without being able to be part of the panel discussion. So Marina was born in Dhaka in Bangladesh, and she now lives and works there. She founded her own practice, and in 2016 she won the Aga Khan Award for Architecture for the design of Beit Roof Mosque in Dhaka. She's a pioneer in what she describes as the architecture of relevance, for which she was awarded the 2021 Sohn Medal. She's currently working on temporary and movable housing solutions for the Rohingya refugees displaced in southern eastern Bangladesh, and she'll talk more about this project. Her practice focuses on designing buildings in tune with their natural environments, in particular working with local materials and communities, whilst also embracing the design challenges of sustainability, environment, and our collective impact on the planet. And she's very close to academia as well, and is a visiting professor at the BRAC University in Dhaka, and she runs undergraduate studios at the University of Asia Pacific, and she really does wear so many hats, which again we can't go into all of them today, but let's hear more about her work. Thank you.
Hello everyone, this is Marina Tabassum. Greetings from Dhaka, Bangladesh. Thanks to INTBAU for this invitation to the session People and Planet for Who. Unfortunately, I'm unable to join, and as such, I have already sent a recorded presentation which will follow. People and planet, I think people are not without the planet, and as such, to ensure our own existence, we need to look after and care for the health of the planet of which we are inhabitants. And planet meaning the entire ecosystem in that sense, and which requires a lot of changes in our living pattern, in our value system. We need to think about the repair and restoration of the natural balance and the ecosystem. At the same time, realizing the changes that are affecting a lot of people around the world who are victims of the climate change, and how we can make ourselves, especially as architects, available to their needs and for a climate preparedness. And in order to do that, we have started working on certain projects which my presentation will show. So I will hope you all have a go through that and have a discussion on it. Unfortunately, I think it's a missed opportunity for me not to be present, to have this dialogue with Anupama Kundoo and Yasmeen Lari, both of whom I admire immensely, and those their works are absolutely inspirational. Their works and pursuits that they have followed through till now. I know Anupama well. We share our common Bengali heritage. I haven't met Yasmeen Appa yet, but I do look forward to meeting her at some point soon. So thank you very much. I define context as a place-time matrix, where place is defined by the uniqueness of a location, defined by the geography, climate, people. Time, on the other hand, is the variable that helps us to evolve and transform as we encounter unfamiliar situations and challenges. We are living through an unprecedented time in history where there is technological innovation, digital connectivity that's bringing us much closer virtually. Yet the physical world experiences inequity, climate crisis that is posing a threat to our existence. The physical realm is where we desperately need to come together and address the existential threats. The projection is that by 2050, Bangladesh will be experiencing 1 meter sea level rise. And by the end of the century, this will inundate 2/3 of our landmass, displacing 30 million people. We architects deal with the physical world. That's our realm of activity. As such, context defines action in order to remain relevant in the times of need. I share with you today an extreme context and a very humble and small effort by my office, Marina Tabassum Architects, MTA, pledged to take on board as a research to gather knowledge and extend our experience of the built environment in a small yet effective way. Located in the Himalayan foothills, 2/3 of Bangladesh was created by the progradation of the Ganges estuary, the largest delta in the world, home to 150 million Bangladeshis. It is one of the most dynamic water systems in the world, as the rivers are constantly shaping and reshaping their courses. Here, 20 years of satellite data shows the movement of the mighty rivers Podda, Meghna, and Jamuna. Due to the heavy flow of glacial water, coupled with monsoon rain, the summer months experience high current in the water system that causes the riverbanks to erode, washing away homesteads, villages, small towns. During the dry season in winter, the current reduces significantly, and due to the tidal action, water flows back into the eastern estuarian system, causing sedimentation in the riverbeds. These temporal sandbeds in the middle of the river are locally called chores. So the Bengal Delta can be defined more as a waterscape rather than a landscape. Wetness defines it, and wetness defines the life of the people living in these areas. This constant interplay of erosion and emergence affects thousands of people living on the banks of the rivers, rendering them homeless, landless. These are stories of loss, torment, and movement. Some families have moved 7 to 10 times in their lifetime from one location to another. At times, the entire village needs to be relocated, including the marketplace, hospitals, government institutions. Here in our research, we have tried to trace all the different locations that one single village had to travel during the different times of the erosion. The houses are adapted to flat-pack system to facilitate the movement. It takes 2 hours to dismantle the house to move to a safer location when the ground starts to show lines of crack. It takes about a week to recreate it in a new location. These mobile form of houses can be bought or ordered in a local market. For the Sharjah Architecture Triennial, we bought 3 houses and shipped them to Sharjah, where we showcased all our research findings. We also showcased personal stories such as village doctor Nazrul Islam, who inherited his grandfather's 60-year-old house that moved 7 different locations. The entire area is dotted with such personal stories. In the Sharjah Architecture Triennial, we were given a courtyard inside the venue, an abandoned school. Here on the left, you see the houses in their own context in Bangladesh. And on the right is in the context of Sharjah. These houses cost between $1,000 to $4,000. Only the lower and middle income families can afford. But there are families who cannot afford to pay for such a house. These are the ultra low income or no income population of the world who live off the land, has zero carbon footprint, yet victims of climate change. Keeping the ultra low income population in mind, in our office, we designed a modular mobile structure with bamboo and steel joints that is lightweight, easy to assemble and disassemble with 3 people, and low in cost. This also needs to withstand the thunderstorms, a regular occurrence in Bangladesh during the monsoon season. This is the first prototype that we built, 24 square meter of space in 2 levels that costs $250. Architects from our office, 2 of them, as you can see in the image, built the structure. The upper level is a place where people can sleep at night, while the lower level can accommodate everyday household activities. As you can see here in the rendering, what is our vision about the cluster of housing that could be created. This is also a kind of a structure that could help during the flood times, especially during the flash flooding in the northern part of Bangladesh, where the lower level, if it gets inundated, can house people on the upper level. The mobility of the structure can also help it to be shifted to other places, maybe rendering a space for income generation as the lower level becomes a place where people can generate their income, and the upper level could be used for their own stay. Here are the images of the prototype structure where you see the upper level, the ladder made out of bamboo that takes one up, and the steel joints. After making this prototype, we decided to take it to the shores of Bangladesh. And this is the location, as you see in the left corner, where we are taking our houses. So we took 4 of these houses. This is the boat that takes one from Dhaka to Chor Bhoirobi. And then from Chor Bhoirobi, you need to take a boat to Chor Hijla. So the entire journey is quite tedious. And this is Chor Hijla. And the upper horizon, that's where the river is. And this, what you see here, is actually the Chor, and in between is some water which goes down during the low tide. This is where we located some of the houses. This is the first house that we built for Abul Hussain and his family. It's a small family, a young couple and a child. We built this house, which is a 20 square meter house with a toilet facility in the front. This is the old house that he had built with tall grass, facade, and tin roofing. Here you see the house that we have built for him. Here one of our team members spent the night, for the first night, to test the structure. So here we employed all the different elements that you can find in the chor. So the facades are made out of tall grass, and the steel joints and bamboos we took with us from the mainland. This is for another family, which is a larger family with 4 children, and we gave them 2 modules. Here you see the 2 modules being erected. So this is a space frame structure which is really sturdy and is able to withstand the thunderstorms. As you can see, there is hardly any trees anywhere around, so the wind pressure is very high. Here you see the 2 module house. Right next to it is the house that they originally built for themselves. And what we did is we did not build any facade on the lower level. We expected the household to make their own facades. So what they did later on is they took the facade from the old house and built the entire house on their own in the lower level. This is the ground level where daily activities take place: cooking, cleaning, keeping the household activities going. And in the upper level, as you see here, they have the beds and the children enjoying themselves on the upper deck, a horizon that they have never seen in their lifetime. Because of the elevation, they're enjoying the view of the rivers. Here is our team of architects. This entire project is done voluntarily by young architects who work with us in our office and also from different parts. So these children do not have any school to go to because they live in the chor and there is no running water, no electricity. So they basically have no connection to education. So we gave them books, pencils to draw, papers, and they are absolutely excited by this generous gift from us. And so this is how we are trying to focus on this entire project, to give people a certain kind of a better living environment, which is of dignity. Here's our team of architects. So at the moment we have about 4 houses in the chores, and we are monitoring their movement and how they are adapting to the whole new house situation. We've had a couple of thunderstorms by this time, and so far the structures have withstand quite well to the natural circumstances. The people are quite happy, but there is about 20 families in this chore where we are building. The other families are also asking for or requesting if they can have a house of that sort. So we plan to build about 100 houses in this year, so that we're able to at least begin this whole activity of being able to provide a certain kind of help or assistance to the people who really desperately need our help. The Bay of Bengal is a hotspot of climate insecurity that is impacting the ecology and biodiversity directly due to the sea level rise. This has also accelerated the erosion and accretion, including flooding. Adaptation to changing phenomenon is a priority. We hope that the modular mobile house can potentially be instrumental in helping the climate victims with options and flexibilities that is key to their survival. Thank you.
Anupama, Thank you so much, Marina, if you watch this later on. And that was incredible. I think it was an amazing pace as well. And the visualizations in the films really made people understand and almost experience some of the problems. Bangladesh is one of the worst countries in terms of what will happen in the next years in terms of flooding. I think we all know that. So I hope that was interesting, but also really important for everyone to see. So now we go to our final kind of presentation for this morning, and then we'll go into a Q&A. So I've been working with Anupama, but unfortunately we've never met in person. But I was in the south of India in Tamil Nadu a few years ago, and she did let me, she organized for me to go to her house, the Wall House, with no one there. She got someone to pick me up in Oroville on a scooter, and he took me to this house, no one there, and it was an incredible house. And that really sums up a lot about Anupama anyway. She's super generous, very caring, and makes things happen that others wouldn't even try, like taking me on a scooter to town in the middle of nowhere. So she trained as an architect in Mumbai before building a substantial body of work in Oroville. She does a lot of research and experimentation in her work, which combines cultural, societal, scientific, and economical thinking. She does a lot of teaching around the globe, including at Parsons, the New School of Design in New York. Her work and design process was recently on show in a monograph exhibition at Louisiana Museum in Denmark, and she was named the 2021 recipient of the Reba Charles Jenks Award. And these three women, are collecting the awards at the moment, and I really do hope they continue. Edwin Heathcote wrote this about Anupama, which I think is really true, and I'm not being lazy when I read someone else's quote. But Anupama is a rare example of an architect who has managed to achieve a huge amount in a difficult arena, housing for the poor in India, and specifically in the settlement of Oroville in Tamil Nadu, but also has established a significant body of work in research into material and craft and how locally made products can be reimagined to become elements of architecture. At its best, her architecture is elegant, ecological, and always intriguing. So I'll hand over to my good friend, Anupama.
Thank you, Parvinder. It's so lovely to hear such generous words. Thank you so much for having me here. And this is especially, like Marina said, I knew it's going to be a memorable meeting. First of all, for me to have an opportunity to talk to Yasmeen Lari and Marina Tabassum, whose work I greatly admire. And I met Yasmeen, I don't know if you remember Yasmeen, 22 years ago in Bombay, facilitated by Brinda. And so, I've been following your work since then, and also Marina's. So, yeah, I'm really happy and looking forward to the discussion. I would like to just summarize the 3 decades of my practice and research under this label, Rethinking Materiality, Time as a Resource. I've been asking myself, when you talk about people and planet, what are the people doing that even though biologically we didn't evolve that much in the last 100 years, post-industrial, we've gone through this industrial revolution, and we have used all our technological advances somehow. Sorry, I just realized my clicker is not where I thought it was, and it's on my phone. So I realized that, how did we go from here, where all the materials come directly from the place in all over the world actually, and all the expertise and refinement of human skills were expressed and shown through this kind of, just a second, hey, I'm on a Zoom call, can we have a little volume? Thank you. So, how did we go from a definition of good architecture where it was the focus was not on the material as a fetish, but on the skills that humanity developed to work with the material? And I often wondered, growing up in a city like Bombay, how did it I don't know why the clicker is not working. How did the landscape change so suddenly in just a couple of 100 years to this, and so there is a kind of, I'm so sorry, I just have to ask, excuse me, can I please have some, because I'm on a Zoom call, just a little volume, thank you. So so we reached a kind of a new vernacular where we have an international approach to mass production housing, as if it were no longer a custom made product but a standardized product, and at what kind of environmental, social and economic cost is this trend. So I have pursued that question, and I have gone from researching all kinds of materials and going back to a basic principle that does technology and technological advances mean that you have to get material from anywhere to anywhere, even just by simply remaining local and still applying technological advances? You can maybe pose the question for us for the future: how could we instead use our emerging knowledge to build many more square meters with whatever's around us? Instead of using that what we have a scarcity of, how could we use that what we have abundance of? I mean, people have also built with ice. You just build with what is around you, and you build. Started looking at materiality, not from the perspective of the materials themselves, but from the perspective of how humans interact with the material. That's the most holistic approach, and I started realizing this those three areas, social, economical and environmental advantages, if you rethink a couple of things. So I'm just going to go through some images so that you can just see the kind of architecture I produced, where the architecture is contemporary, but the materials and the people who handle the materials are from the place, and break what is there, what we have an abundance of, and also the human resource that we invest to create architecture. And through that, I produced all this kind of architecture with whatever was around us. And in a place where I thought there was actually nothing, I landed up by shifting my gaze to realize, that if you just look with new eyes, there is never nothing. There's always a lot of things. We just have to figure out how to make architecture out of that. So from natural stone, terracotta to round wood construction, uh, this was my own hut where I lived for 10 years, where I realized that it's not it's not so difficult. It's actually quite attractive to build with what is around you. And if you when we come with an architectural knowledge, we know how to uh, do form finding, structural engineering, building construction, and all of this in a holistic way to produce the spaces that today's human society needs. And even vernacular materials can go a long way. For instance, if you build vernacular methods can be rethought radically, or sort of one can build upon all of that and add layers of innovation to them. So for instance, to build with round wood as opposed to timber, you save a lot of years if you don't have to cut it in a rectangular section first, taking a much bigger tree and then cutting it into rectangular and building it, as opposed to using them directly as round wood. This is rammed earth, because we had to do a wastewater treatment plant and we did a housing project out of it. And this is a co-housing project, a prototype for an urban eco community. So you see all these kind of hybrid technologies that I have used, with walkways on upper levels. And we even did earth construction that we managed to fire in situ and stabilize into brick, like cooking actual earth houses so that the house first doubles up as a kiln, because in a kiln, when you fire bricks, about 40% of the heat you generate gets actually lost into the kiln walls in each firing. And building upon Ray Meeker's pioneering work of firing houses in situ, I have also done some of those houses that way to understand these type of trends. I'm also, given climate change, I'm also researching not just natural materials, but I'm trying to take up the high energy materials to try to significantly reduce the amount of steel and cement by looking into ferrocement instead of reinforced cement concrete, where instead of using large sections, we use just 1 inch profiles and chicken mesh instead of large diameter bars, and just a little bit of 4 millimeter or 3 millimeter bars for reinforcement. So I see a lot of potential in these type of technologies, and we are also researching natural fiber and alternative fiber and differently made cement, because I think what happens is, if you create a divide between earth and cement, high tech and low tech, what's going to happen is that I come from Bombay, and in regions are not, we have 3 times the population in 50 years only. So if we let technologies, natural technologies, limit how high and how much density we can build, we are going to eat up the agricultural land. So we have very interesting challenges that compel, also they force us to research also high energy materials and try to reduce the embodied energy significantly. So these are some modular housing experiments where masons can be make little modules in their own backyards, not in a factory. Try to boost local economy. And this was in the Venice Architecture Biennale, where you see the interior quality of this kind of houses that we have been testing. You see, instead of breaking, ferrocement bends. There is a ductility which will be quite useful to navigate disaster relief and all that. So this is the direction I've worked. This is a ferrocement toilet that you can assemble in a day, 4 components: shower and a cubicle called EZWC that we developed. And later, that's where Parvinder and me collaborated on a project with British Council to produce sanitation for the future, and also cast in situ approach to ferrocement. Because it's so thin, I'm attempting to discover forms through origami crease patterns that give it rigidity, and therefore these very thin 1 inch elements can actually be cast on recycled carton. And these are all my experiments for the future, so that one day when we are asked to do these things, we have a lot of things to offer. This is a prototype just to test how that roof works in 1-to-1. And this is some images of all the my research and engineering that we are doing in the back end, to create this type of architecture. And this was displayed recently at the Louisiana Museum of Modern Art, where they did a solo show on my work. And then I'm also building with urban waste. These are temporary structures built with recycling books, and also books for seating, by folding them, wrapping them, making umbrellas and canopies. But I'm also using urban waste as formwork. We are just using whatever is around us. Broken chai cups for masonry. We're just using what we find. And some of this has been also, David Chipperfield had invited me to share this under his curated work at the 2012 Biennale called Common Ground. So I think the common ground is in the making. And and I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. The type of explorations we can do are infinite. And I'd like to end with sitting here in Oroville right now, doing this presentation. This is the urban. There is a dimension to my work which is about urban planning for cities of the future, and I'm continuing upon the work of Chief Architect Roger Anger, who has designed Oroville, and I collaborated with him for a long, long time. And I'm doing high density co-housing, new models for housing with green infrastructure. And a lot of these researches that I'm doing are to produce high-density solutions and alternatives to the tower typology, because we all know that towers, make us lose human scale and make the human beings, take a back seat, and all this we are designing in the machine scale actually. So I would like to end with this image where I'm discussing here with Jan Gale about this project in University of Stuttgart, where I was teaching. And I see the future of architecture practice as requiring a major shift from architectural competition to collaboration, interdisciplinary collaboration, but also within the discipline, with different stakeholders and user groups. And I think instead of architects feeling like they are impotent, I think the future will be much more empowering if we are willing to collaborate with each other, because we don't have time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anupama. That was amazing, especially the image of Oroville, and I know you're doing incredible work there. At one point, I did think you were going to say me and Pravinder were working on a project to do with a toilet, but it was around water systems and ecologies. But yes, so going into the Q&A and have your questions ready if you have any, but I'll kick off with pretty much the last thing that Anupama said. Anu, you said about high density and high tech, and you kind of reinforced that. And I know that, Yasmeen, you look at a lot of low tech models. So I just wondered what you guys thought about that. And I know we've had discussions before about this hybrid model, like one or the other, but I think it's important to discuss where tech can play a role and not, and also what, the geographical difference between the condition in India, which is a very high population of people, and why you might need to go high density and do materials work. Do local materials work for high density without using any concrete and steel? So I will go to, Anu, maybe you can discuss what you feel about the high tech versus low tech.
See, there is a tug of war. For us in India, we face a tug of war, I think also for the planet, between the growing population and the growing consumption of all resources per capita at the same time. So I think that at least in India, I know we are 2.4% of the land of the globe, but we are 1/6 of the global population. I think that if we just try to build based on ground floor and 2-floor structures, we should, I by all means, we don't need to build high everywhere. We must, wherever possible, use these modern technologies. Or I wouldn't like to call this shift, like it's not about tradition and modern, it's about high embodied energy materials and natural materials. So the tug of war between environment and development, in order to give everybody the same standard of minimum modest, equal sort of access to an opportunity at life. If we sprawl, if we use certain technologies and do not use some amount of manufactured materials, I've seen the cost at which we spread and the energy that you save in the building of the structure gets spent in the transportation, spending 2 hours per day one way traveling and so on. So I don't have answers. I know that this is a question we cannot afford to ignore. So out of necessity, I have begun to explore all of these materials. I've never forgotten this reality of pressures in Bombay and places that are so unlivable. So I, as an ex-Bombayite, I keep on thinking that whatever I research, whatever I do in one project, I try to see the product value of that. And over the years, I realized that there's so much work to be done in each of the materials in pushing the boundary, and basically to use any material consciously and to use the best case to case instead of, being defined by a material that I use or so, something like that. That's what I have to say.
Okay, hello? Yes. Thank you, Anupama.
Sure, yes. Thank you, Anupama, for this invitation. I agree with you. There's so much pressure in our area that we need to find a solution. But I also know that uh, uh, multi-story towers don't necessarily solve the problem. First of all, multi-story towers are expensive and they use very high carbon materials, and they are totally, I feel, unsuitable for families, particularly women and children. I like to go back to our old towns, traditional ways of doing where you get fairly medium density. Yes, you do not get high density of the New York towers, for instance, but you get medium density and you get really a humanistic environment. Because what is life if you are cooped up in something like on the 20th floor when you have no way that you can even have, breathe there outside, and also you really can't afford it. I mean, the poor are still relegated to the slums where they live in one or two.
Tech is a little bit bad at the moment. We can't hear you properly. Can you hear me?
Really sorry, it should not be working because I thought I saw that we got it now. Can you hear me now?
Don't worry at all. Don't worry. Yes, we can hear you. Continue, please.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
So, so I feel the answer is not in following high-tech solutions. I think the answer is not in using a lot of embodied energy or using high carbon materials. I think we have to look at people first. What is suitable for them? What will give them really safe and affordable housing? Multi-story towers can be for the rich. Why don't we put them all into one enclave and make 20-story towers like New York, or 35-story or 40, whatever, or maybe 100, I don't know. And they can live in them. I have no
Cutting again. Maybe you can move. You may have to talk a little bit slower but closer to the laptop.
Okay, right. All right. Can you hear me now? Is it better?
Yes.
Are you better? Okay, fair enough. I'll just do that now. So I feel that we need to really shift our emphasis from buildings into what do we do with the mass of people. And what do we want from them, for them? Not necessarily for land speculators, not necessarily for government agencies and politicians who want really visible symbols of their own kind of political power, but to see what do the people want. And the people, I know the poor people want to live a life where women and children can be safe, and they want something that will not leak or will not be affected by disaster. So the question now for architects and urban designers is how do we reach that particular solution, which is not, high rise, it is medium density, it is low rise maybe, but very close together. So the densities can be fairly high if we were to design in that way. You've seen it in our old towns, in Lahore, in Multan, there's so many, in Tata, we have in Peshawar, there's so many of towns in my country that we can learn from. So I'm sorry, but I think we are finding the easy way out when we say let's go in for multi-story towers. I feel we need to work hard to see low carbon solutions, maybe hybrid solutions, medium density, and low rise. That is something that I think is possible. Thank you. I don't know.
Thank, thank you, Yasmeen Appa. We heard some of it, okay? And what we heard was golden.
You're very kind, Pavinder, always. Right.
It's okay. Anu, what do you think? I mean, I guess the thing is that India has the population problem that you were talking about, but I know you're looking at kind of hybrid solutions, I guess. And Anu, can you hear me? We're having a nice tech issue here. Okay. I guess, Yasmeen Appa, I will then... Are you here? You can hear me.
Yeah, yeah, I can hear you fine, yes.
Okay, so... Anupama's cut off. Okay, hopefully Anupama will join us again. Maybe she's had tech issues as well. So we've got two people with tech issues, but at least we got to hear from them. Is Yasmeen Appa still online?
Yeah, I am. I can hear you.
It's going to be
I can hear you, Pawan.
chat with you and me now, okay? We're used to this.
All right,
so
great.
we're
Yeah, I
good
like
at this.
that. I like that.
So I guess the other thing is that you do a lot of work. Your mission is around DIY, kind of do it yourself. You want them to be self-reliant. You do not want the people in the villages to necessarily get money from people. And do you think there's a limit to that? Like, what role does the architect then play? So you train all these people up to have mass impact, but do you think there's a limit to DIY? Sometimes I think, is it safe for them to build by themselves? I mean, we've been kind of taught about all these ways of building. So, and I know our project looks at that too, but do you think there's a limit to how much DIY you can do before it becomes sprawl and, you know, creates more problems than good?
Yeah, of course, there's always that danger. You rightly say this. It they can pose a danger when you let people do it themselves. But what I have found is that if people build themselves, they will follow your instructions, and we cannot just tell them to go and follow whatever has been shown in the YouTube video. We always have a monitoring system as well, so we watch every step. And what the good thing about it is that if you design something which has all these safety factors built in, then the chances of the structure not being safe are minimized. But at the same time, it is important to watch it to see how they did. Sometimes, I mean, if you build, 3 or 4 stories, it may be a problem. But I know that up to 2 stories, we've tried it and we can actually manage it. You see, the question that I find is that, first of all, I don't want charity fund that people should be collecting money to give to them. I think people are quite willing to save and to be able to pay back, but the product has to be affordable. Unless we make it so that they're going to, it should be safe also. As I said, for any kind of foreseeable disasters, the structure must be safe. I think it can be done in at least my context, in the context of Pakistan, but also we have problem with population. I mean, Karachi is really now something like over 20 million people. I mean, it's really grown like anything. And some of our slums are horrendous to go in. It is a similar problem in so many of East Asia, South Asia, and also in Sub-Saharan Africa. So I think architects in this part of the world have to find a solution which will actually be able to reach to the poor. Because if we don't do that, then of course we can do, really interesting designs, but whether people can have access to it, that is a big question for me. And I think that more and more architects need to concentrate on this. I keep on saying the architects have this great power of design, which no other professional actually has. And through design, you can transform lives. You can make sure that everything works. You can make sure that their life is better. So that's what I'd like to see, actually. I don't know.
Thank you, Yasmeen Appa. I guess you're saying that we do have an intermediary role almost, architects, and I think there is a shifting role for architects today if you're looking at the global south. Yasmeen Appa, I'm so sorry. There is a delay, but I'm going to actually take a few questions from the audience. If we can hear you, then we're going to you're going to try and answer them. Okay? Does anyone have any questions? I know we've only got 5 minutes, and sorry about tech, but are there any questions that you guys want to ask Yasmeen from the audience or online? Yes, please.
Thank you so much. This is so Thank you so much for this wonderful lectures. This is so inspiring, and I really wish I could come and work with you. So I'm really learning from you because, and well, I have one question because I'm kind of a really old school architect, and so I'm drawing a lot, and I don't use computers, and I don't have this kind of hands-on experience, which I think I'm very jealous of. But I was just wondering, how much drawing? What is the relationship between drawing, sketching, and designing and building? So what is the kind of, because I have the feeling also when I see for example, in the other architects, so the Bombay architect, these wonderful structures, and they are really complex. And I imagine that a lot of this experimentation are done immediately with the material. So it's kind of more sculptural work, and you kind of immediately work with the craftspeople and the material, and and the design is done afterwards. So the drawing is done when the building is built already. So I don't know if the question is kind of articulate, but just this kind of dialectics, drawing, sketching, building, and designing.
Yasmeen Appa, I don't know if you heard that, because by your face I'm thinking that you might not have. So I will try and repeat it, and we're going to have to make this humorous.
I got the gist of it,
Okay.
and I think we go through the same processes, whether we're building for the poor or for the rich. We have to design, we have to produce drawings, we have to make sure everything works. We have to make sure that when it's building, we are able to supervise and watch it as to how it goes up. So the process is the same, but I think the attitude is different. The whole role of the architect today in the global south, in the places that I'm working in, is entirely different from the way that I was taught. When I was taught 60 years ago, you must remember that. So I've had to relearn everything. And now I don't even worry if there are changes in the housing that I design for people. They innovate on that. They make them even more beautiful than I could have thought. So it is a process of co-building and co-designing. They have to understand the kind of structure they are building. So we actually give them drawings to read, and even my women are able to read. So it's a matter of teaching them, but it's a very different role of the architect than you might think of. And I don't think you can even imagine the kind of situation that you have to work in when you go to villages which are totally deprived of any kind of facilities, or people who are non-literate, or women who need so much help in so many ways. So that architecture is not just a piece of tangible structure, but it is to have so many other intangibles, like how do you create more dignified life for them? How can we do so that they get more respect in the community? How we do it so that they automatically everything is cleaner. I mean, there are just so many issues that you are not confronted with when you're working in elite societies or in as this architect role. So that's why I'm just totally ignoring whatever my practice had been. I mean, I was taught to design well, I think, which was wonderful. And I think I want to use those design capabilities to scale down to the level, to the people that I'm working for. And my clients today are when they says they are poorest of the poor. So I have to see how to relate to them. And that's what I'm trying to do.
Yasmeen Appa, and just I guess I can a little bit repeat what Yasmeen Appa actually said, because we have a number of conversations around this thing around technology. In one side, she's trying to mobilize using technology because she knows that a lot of these people have smartphones, but on the other side, a lot of them are illiterate. And we've spoken a lot about other forms of literacy that architects need to look at, and drawings and other things are like that, and making culture. So you'll see the chula, and the reason why she knew that, and we've had several conversations about it, that these women can build their own cooker, that's the chula, is literally because she knew they could cook food. So because they could make and they could mix flour and water to make earth bricks, she knew that, they would be able to do this. And it's, even where Yasmeen is, and we were in Pakistan, a lot of people in these villages speak Sindhi, and a lot of people in the cities can't speak that, they speak Urdu. So again, language is a huge opportunity and barrier in these places, and I think we need to look at other forms of communicating and doing these. And I just want to bring Marina in because I know she hasn't been part of the discussion, and unfortunately I know Anupama hasn't either. Hopefully we can do it again sometime, Harriet, and we will try and resolve tech. But Marina talks about, how we enter communities. It's a question that we all have. How do they even enter these communities? And I remember Yasmeen Appa telling me that for her, it was because she was a woman. She was going to all these women when we were doing a project, and there was like this inherent trust in that. And for Marina, she said she entered through kind of organizations that were already within these cities and then tried to build trust that way. And the way she started one of her the project that she showed you with the house that she prototyped with them was to go there initially to build one, and the community had to choose. So it's very much community engagement, had to choose which person would be able to build first their house. And she said they chose the poorest family, and they built the house, and for weeks and months they would test it as you saw. And I think they don't have, I'm going to wrap up now, but I guess what all three of these architects are saying, they don't have the luxury of time in the Global South. So from drawing to experimenting to building, and the prototype being the actual house they live in, there is not much time between that process. And I think it's a lot about rapid prototyping using hybrid models and the role of the architect shifting and changing. And I think all of us just want to learn from those types of examples, because we are experiencing climate change here. But yes, I'm going to wrap up now because my speakers, Yasmeen Appa, do you want to say anything else to close, actually, if we can hear you?
No, Parvinder, you did it very well, and yes, I think we should be looking at other forms of language and of skills and doing things, and I think we need to have respect for those as well, as much as we do for our own skills. I think we can do that, but it requires a lot of humility to work with people whom you might feel that are quite up to the mark. And I think working with community is a different ball game altogether. And unless they trust you, unless they they know that you're there for their own benefit, I don't think things can go very far. So I think one is very lucky. I think Marina is very lucky that she got the entree. I'm very lucky that I've got the entree, and I think Anupama is doing an amazing job of doing things where she's working with materials which will be replicable. So yeah, I think there's huge potential, and I hope many other architects also try and do that, and that would change the world, right?
That will change the world. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Yasmeen Appa. You were amazing, and I know we heard you in bits. Hopefully we'll gather you guys together, and Marina can join another time, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we're going to go to we're going to go to the coffee break, and then after the coffee break we will watch the film about the gender program and go into the program as structured. Thank you. Back. I hope you had a nice break. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly introduce the film that we made, and it will turn into a longer film. So Huma and her team have done an amazing job of making this for us for this event today. And essentially it reflects what we did with the program between Bangladesh and Pakistan. We live streamed during a 3-day build between both countries. We had a huge screen in Pakistan where you could literally see the Bangladeshi young students building at the exact same time, and they were having exchanges through talks, and they did different things actually. They used different materials in some ways with thatching, and hopefully you'll get a bit of a representation of what's to come as well in London. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. This film that you're about to see is more about a journey of all those people who've been inspired by the Yasmeen Lari solutions. You'll see that in the film. What are those solutions? But all of us need to shift our focus and understand that today, in the challenges that we face because of climate change, women and children are the most vulnerable. And unless we join this effort to radically shift the way we work, it's going to be too late. So I hope that you also get inspired, because there's been enough talk on this, and it's about time that we all live our values.
Putting together two wounded nations on one page is by no means easy. Today, after nearly half a century since the creation of Bangladesh, Pakistan's renowned first women architect Yasmeen Lari has brought the future generations of both countries together for a common cause. It's about alleviating poverty and improving the lives of the poorest of the poor by building affordable homes for them. It's about tying the knots. Numerous devastating disasters in Pakistan was a calling for Mrs. Lari.
And when I was practicing as an architect, it never even occurred to me that this was something that an architect could even deal with or had anything to do with it. I thought this is not my concern.
It was the pathetic living conditions of IDPs in the sweltering heat of Swat and Vardhan that brought out the genius of the Lari architect.
And then the only material I could find available easily was bamboo.
Now the Lari Octogreen became a worldwide success. The Yasmeen Lari Zero Carbon channel put out numerous training videos, but the masses still remained unreachable. Then came the dreaded COVID that shut down the world but opened unprecedented opportunities for others.
I was so intrigued. I was like, okay, Yasmeen, could you prototype these with women specifically? I just, again, provoked her and said, could you do it in Bangladesh then? And she said, again, without a shadow of doubt, yes.
Good morning, Karachi, and good morning, Dhaka. Welcome to the first day of the start of the Gender and Zero Carbon Workshop. Girls of both countries are busy building Lari Octogreen. The best part of it is that it is being streamed live.
In the midst of Karachi's busiest centre lies the famous Rahaguzar, the quaint colonial street restored by Mrs. Lari's Heritage Foundation. Nevertheless, it is at first for the young architects challenging, and it remains to be seen if it will affect their concentration or confidence.
Like these men have to come here and support us, like you guys are doing a really great job. But they were like, yeah, these girls are doing this thing. That was not fair, but girls can do anything they want. I have energy. I may look like I'm thin, I'm skinny, but I have enough energy and I have enough strength to do like heading things. ध्यान से। Are we up for it?
कौन सा बकरा ज़िबा होने वाले?
This is for women empowerment. We have so much more strength than we think we do. I didn't expect myself to be hammering so much, to nail a lot of panels, to build a foundation, and to actually erect the bamboo hut. I couldn't believe that girls could do it. I think everyone should have an open mind when working in a group because everybody thinks differently. Everyone has different perceptions of how things can be done. So all of those thoughts and those ideas are welcome inside a group, and they should be welcome.
And I've been a part when we started drawing the plans. So seeing the plans and then the small model and finally the construction. I'm supposed to be feeling very tired, but I'm very excited.
This is actually my first time working with bamboo, and I learned a lot of things. From cutting to shaping to nailing. So hopefully we'll be learning more.
I think we can build a bamboo building by ourselves now.
And it was hard because the strongest bamboo in Bangladesh, Borak bamboo, very strong. And they were very tired doing it. And then when they were tired, in 5 minutes time, they would do a dance or music or, bamboo dance or other kind of dance. And they're technically savvy, of course, and they're now savvy in a bamboo construction.
How's it going?
Oh, it's going really well. Like, this architecture is not all about designing in an enclosed space. It's the experience that we get here. It's working with your own hands, getting the skills, the craftsmanship, getting it done by your own fingers. If you can see they're acting like a mazdoor right now, maybe a laborer, but at this level, the skill, it's gonna entertain them their whole life. Look at these pictures. So at University of Lahore, we invented the whole facade. Then we added the string art just to make it more lively and more earthen, close to complementing the whole earthen language.
While the girls are busy, 3,000 miles away from London, Harriet of INTBAU International is sorting out her side of preparation for the big days in the capital.
We know the colours that Beauty is sending, but it might even be nicer and more realistic just to send the photographs.
There are concerns, but at the end of the day, diplomacy wins.
So that edging should also be the same color as the last color, which is green. Right?
Do you know, Harriet, this entire segment can run as a fantastic conflict resolution segment for the world? How do you deal with conflicts?
The program has wider implication and is not limited to just the two countries involved. The girls here have gone through intensive training through workshops, and the Lari tutorials were instrumental in starting a shift and a movement to reach out to the masses.
Who are the people that we are supporting here? They're young people, they're emerging young women that we're supporting, and the London element came in, or the UK element came in, because essentially we wanted these women to have the opportunity to kind of go and experience building there, and also for the UK women, the students, to also participate together in this exchange, which we thought would be incredible.
I find the fact that young women are working with their hands, they're learning how to cut the wood, how to nail it together, to do this work that is so intrinsically thought of as male. Women are doing it. And I think it's also interesting because in the urban context, women don't do this work, but women in the rural context do very hard work.
The Lari Octogreen is an iconic structure for populations in disaster-prone countries. and is being adapted and gaining support all over the world.
Our adjustment was just a little bit, which is raising it up, raising the plinth up 1.5 feet to 2 feet depending on the rain in the context, and also extending the tile roof or the straw roof or the thatch roof almost 2.5 feet for rain protection and also for giving shading.
In Bangladesh, the project's impact on working with communities has been instrumental in upscaling the project, thus covering larger populations.
This girl from the informal settlement, or what we call slum, who is a tiny little thing but so full of energy, embodied good energy. She also motivated others because she's quiet and just works. Our student cut 1 bamboo, she would cut 3 bamboos same time.
ছোটবেলা থেকেই পুরুষদের ঘর বানাতে দেখেছি, তো এই প্রথমবারের মতো আমরা সব মেয়েরা মিলে ঘর তৈরি করেছি। নিজেকে খুব আত্মবিশ্বাসী মনে হচ্ছে যে না, আমিও পারি ঘর বানাতে।
There are people who don't understand why we want to protect heritage and why we want to not get rid of all those old buildings and have new glass, concrete structures in their place. They never understand the importance. So we will maybe face criticism that we are playing with mud in Granary Square. But I think people who are thinking women and people who know what this is all about will appreciate what we are doing.
And this is not just about Karachi. This model is for the whole developing world. You know, जहाँ पे आपने urban development का जो sustainable model जो है, this is what it is.
One woman who's going there, for instance, her name is Champa, and she's riding a rickshaw in that area. Why? Because Yasmeen Lari sort of promoted her, funded her, and taught her how to drive a rickshaw. So she's doing that in addition to making these chulas. So it's a mixture of women empowerment things.
The zero carbon Sindhi chula, acclaimed internationally, is not only a zero carbon marvel, but also a strong symbol of empowerment. And it shows how traditional wisdom has answers to many climate challenges.
You know, we have such strong traditions, and we have what I call ancient wisdoms, which have been there for centuries. And there are so many solutions that actually have been practiced by this part of the world, because you know, in the light of in the face of really limited resources or non-existent resources, how do you manage things? I think everybody has to think of homelessness, of people who can't afford things. You have to look at, you know, there are climate migrants, there are conflict-driven migrants. There's just so much disruption today in the world that unless you can reduce the cost of construction and reduce the cost, the planet has to pay for it, both the actual financial cost and the ecological cost. Unless we look at it, we will not get anywhere.
Incredible. I can't believe it.
Thank you very much to Huma, who I think can hear and is watching, and thanks to all the students in Bangladesh and Pakistan, and to Yasmeen, who are also joining us online throughout these sessions. So as Parvinder was mentioning, we're going to have 3 of the students from Pakistan, 3 from Bangladesh, and 6 from the UK to join them to build a bamboo structure and a chula on Granary Square near King's Cross for the last 10 days in May. And the same group will then dismantle the bamboo structure and rebuild it at Highgrove in the garden there, where it will stay for the visitor season. So everyone welcome. There'll be events and programs happening alongside the build, so I hope everyone can come to see that in action. Now, a great pleasure for me to introduce Irshad Ali Sodar, who is here from Karachi and who is Deputy Commissioner for Karachi South and is going to speak to us a little bit about some of the eco-urbanism principles that he has been helping to support, working together with Heritage Foundation of Pakistan and INTBAU Pakistan on the Raguzar, which was the setting for the bamboo structure being built in Karachi that we just saw on the video. Thank you very much, Irshad. Welcome.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon. It's indeed a privilege to be part of this conference and representing INTBAU Pakistan and Government of Pakistan. As a civil servant, maybe I'm an unusual speaker here, but I will bring a different perspective to the development of cities from here. It's how we build cities from here. So as a civil servant, I face many challenges, like it's more, in the current scenario, it's about the climate, environmental hazards, the pressure of population, and the civic issues in urban areas, and the sustainability problem, because many projects that are undertaken by governments are not sustainable because of the linkage between the community and government. So here, we found out Madam Lari's vision, that is to build climate smart and regenerate the historic core of Karachi into an eco-urban enclave. I'm lucky to have been introduced with Madam Lari in a conference where she presented her project in Karachi Transformation Conference, and I was like, this is a solution for future of the development of cities, in particular the developing countries. So we moved ahead. Madam Lari had selected this street in the old historic center of Karachi that is densely populated and had the old architectural historic buildings as well, and it was kind of a mushroom of problems for me. You know, in monsoon, the street was filled with because of urban flooding, and it was inundated. In routine, it was encroached by different vendors, illegal parking. So many issues in this street, and that this would give you a usual picture of the urban centers in developing countries, particularly the metropolises, because of the huge population burden. So this street was selected, and with a project that Madam Lari designed in 2019, and I was lucky to pick that in a conference, and then we partnered to implement this project, which covered many aspects. It's about using this low carbon materials, having forest in the market, midst of the market, and having community own the project for the sustainability. You can see from heritage perspective as well, there are 12 heritage buildings on this street, which with the passage of time had been disfigured. There were many illegal structures on these heritage buildings. You can see circled above these buildings, and subsequently we see that these are like 12 heritage structures. We have to restore them, make pedestrianized walkways, make food courts, because some businesses were to be displaced. We had to make food courts and a cloth market in that same street to accommodate the people who were being dislocated. Though they were illegal encroachments, but still they had been doing business in that street, so we had to accommodate them as well. So with 7 aquifer wells, even this whole street is a permeable street. The rainwater is absorbed into the groundwater, but we have aquifer wells that help us absorb more water. So this is how the picture has changed, you know, from the day we started the work, before that and after. Now this is current. You have seen the video on this street. As the workshop is also done in this street, because this street has become a center of the cultural activities nowadays. You know? So here, like the same street, having different features, same community, doing business there, walkways and forests within it. You can see on the extreme right, the food courts are also established in the same street. This is about the conservation of heritage. You can see the upper slide, the illegal structures above the heritage buildings, and in the lower picture you can see those illegal structures are being removed. Particularly on the right side, you can see there were 2-story illegal structure on one old heritage building, and that complete 2-story is now removed. And interestingly, this is not just done by coercive measures of government hand. This is done by engaging the community, by involving them, by explaining to them. But this has personally changed my perspective, because many times the governments are like, you know, the people don't cooperate with government. Here it changed my perspective, because when we engaged community, that trust deficit was reduced, and that's a major factor why this street has been a successful project. You see many features in this permeability, the aquifer wells, and particularly on the right side, I know Karachi was known for biodiversity because of the deforestation. Lake of the green trees, we call it a concrete jungle nowadays, you know. But by promoting greenery and plantation in the contemporary development projects, we are bringing that biodiversity back into the city as well. So that's also a very interesting aspect to this project. You see now many cultural activities take place in the same street, particularly on the holidays when shops are closed. You know, so many workshops are being done in the same street, and people of the community also gather and arrange some, you know, Qawwali nights, some music nights, some, you know, talks, and that has become a very happening place nowadays. You see, this is Madam Lari had mentioned. These are the women in Makli who are making the same clay tiles, and the artisans are also engaged from those rural areas. And this also solves another urban issue on the metropolises, but of the migration, you know, migration from the rural areas to the urban areas. If we are able to create that linkage of rural areas with the urban centers, they are working for the development of the urban centers, you can reduce that migration from the areas, and it will also help to reduce the poverty and provide livelihood to the poor people as well. So most interesting partnership in a way, so in which a civil society organization led by Madam Lari, Heritage Foundation, government and the people, the community stakeholders join hands to undertake this project. This project is not taken single-handedly, and this is the beauty of the project. This provides us a model for sustainability, where we engage with the community, and the common ownership of the area of the neighborhood is taken, and that's how it is sustainable. It has been 1 year, and this street is flourishing. That is because of that tripartite understanding to undertake such projects. So which usually I see as a civil servant, I have noticed that generally governments would undertake projects without taking the community on board, which creates that distrust as well as disconnect between the government and the people, and ultimately those projects are kind of failure. So here is how that role of all three partners was divided. Heritage Foundation conceptualized this project, provided the major part of the funding in this project, and helped us monitoring the implementation of this project. The Deputy Commissioner's Office, which is my office, mobilized the different agencies, even the corporate sector. Karachi Electric is a private company, but they also invested in this project to take their cables and electric wires underground, and the civic agencies of the government took their own part. Sewage system was rehabilitated in this street, and the district municipal corporation also provided for the removal of encroachments and providing soil for the forest pits. And the shopkeepers there, the people that live there, they do business there, they participated in restoration of these buildings. They are themselves restoring their own buildings. They willingly provided for the plantation in these small forests and that. And now we have created the maintenance committees of those shopkeepers who have to ensure the cleanliness and maintenance of these forests and the public space. So the ownership and the monitoring of the whole street is with that community. It's not the government that's running this street now. So even this shows about the cost of this project, which was again shared between major funding came from the Heritage Foundation, and the rest of the funding came from the K Electric and the civic agencies of Karachi. So that's how the partnership worked. Thank you very much, and open for question and answer if you like. Thank you. Any questions?
Are you hoping to replicate this model across Karachi and other cities in Pakistan in order to promote heritage? It does seem to be focused on existing historic streets.
No, this is I consider it as a model project, and the major my interest was to undertake this project and project the success of this project to the government to replicate it in the other areas. Though this is a 2-kilometer trail, of which we have just done 400 feet now, but the rest of the 2 kilometers project of the same street has been taken over by the government of Sindh with the help of World Bank. So that I see is kind of, success of the project is like how other agencies and other government departments would undertake projects on these lines. And that's to me is a major success, because we wanted to convey the message that for solution of the urban blight, this is how you go forward. And that is being replicated in the rest of the city as well. And I think this is a model solution for solving solution for urban issues in all the globe. Yeah.
So this area, So this is an area which is already quite exceptionally beautiful, and there's a lot of heritage. But what would you do if you have like areas in the city where you don't have this quality of built environment, and where you would have also maybe to invest a lot even in building up, or to produce some type of interesting context?
Since the project focuses on creating public spaces, I understand that in this area, particularly the heritage buildings provide the beauty to the site. But even in other areas, taking the guidelines from the project, like having permeable pavements, having aquifer wells, having forests. So forest greenery itself, it's biodiversity and beauty to any project that you undertake in the city. So I think if we follow the basic principles of this project, we can undertake in any area, whether that has a historic architecture or not.
So in some way, this becomes an incentive for self-regeneration. So the owners might kind of help.
Yeah, okay. Exactly. And particularly, this helps us simultaneously. Nowadays, we are building 2 other streets and other areas of the city with the partnership of the community. Okay. Because we have learned a lesson that if community is engaged, they will own the street and they will run the street. So this has been started replicating in different parts of the city, even now. And I think if this is spread out to the world, this can be followed anywhere in the other developing countries of the world. Thank you very much, and it was very nice talking to you. Thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. We had an absolutely amazing selection of candidates this year, but we're delighted to welcome Ema Ziya, this year's winner of the INTBAU Yangu Research Award, to talk to you about a fascinating subject, and one which has remained at the very edges of our common knowledge of indigenous vernacular architecture. In line with the themes of this year's Congress, Ema's research has much relevance to the way buildings can be constructed environmentally and using the most sustainable technologies and localized materials. There is, of course, another aspect, that of cultural distinctiveness and the importance of celebrating these things. When we hear about Ema's research, we realize just how important it is for us to record, understand, and value even the most unknown of architectural traditions, as we never know when or how they might be lost, particularly relevant today. So, Ema.
අනෝටකි අලිපොරි දොම්මාවඩිගේ දරි එන කියනි අබ්දුල්ලා දැන් අලවඩකි දොම්මාවඩිගේ දරි අලි නේද දැන් අලවඩකි අලවඩ බප්පේ ඉස්කෝලනි මාවඩිකන් අලවඩ ෆෙදුම් එනවා දැන් එහෙම අලවඩ බප්පේ එක්කන් අලවඩ ගෙන්දී වඩා දැන් ගොස්කින් වඩාන් කරෝයි බොරුවෙන් අලවඩ දස්කෝයි වඩා දස්කෝගේ හැම කිසරඩන් කොනේ අබදුස් කොරම් ආස් මිහාර දෝනිපාරගේ ගන්න හදන් පෙරීම තෙදියඩන් කරන්නේ ඒ ගෙගඬු හදනි තෙදියඩා මන්ද එහෙම ඒක කුරියසක තෙදියඩා මාසක කොම්මිසර කුරාන ගේග අමිල්ල මාසක ඒකත නෝනේ asli බොනද තෙදියඩා මානගතකි කොම්ම ගොතේ සමරීති රහය තෙද කුරියාච මරාද කිසරඩා මොනවානේ කිසරඩා වංගෙන් ගොන් දින ඔඩා ෆොරෝ ඒරුගා මිහාරදෙන් අද චේනු කියා ඉච්චෙන් ගොනස් ඒරුගොනෝන අර චේනු කිහෙස් අම්ම ඔඩලිනා ෆොරෝලිනා හුරියා කරපා බන්දාසුනානි අම අතුන් හදා හොන්දා මේ මාලේ බේරුම් ගෙන්න රොන්දා නිල්බේ මාවම අතුන් හදන්නේ දැන් දෝනි පාර පන්නේරුස් ඉලි බේන කුරානි මුලින් බස් හොරති ඉලි බේරුච්ච බේන මෙන කුරාන ඒ නිල්බේනි वार तफात निकंदम हकीकत ए मिकमकी उसे कने तेदु वडा कने कुरा कमेन तेदु वडाम गे तेरेंगस मुहिम कल ए लियलिया जा पोरे नो ए तफात देन अनेक मीगा कोनेगिन होरियाचु हुननी तलवलवा फेच्चे नुजा हुनन मारता मीगा होरी इसके तो त्यानक मी मिस्कितु का गाता हुरी बराबर नंबर जाग ए नंबर की गा वद्दम गाम देखो मावत की फेहिब अनगල नेकमंजක අන දිමෙන් වාන මේ තන්තම් දුරවාන එහෙම එහෙමව දෙපාර කරාවන්ජ ගාත ඒ ගාත රංගල රේවිජ්ජියා වාන උත කියලා කොටි තසුනා රංගල එනවා දැන් මේ මතී පුරාවක මේ ලකොඩි මේ අවම හෙරිලා පොඩි आव करो बेर भी फुला ऐसे गई मणि हमास ऐसी को तो कि आने आवन में रोंदा मरा नियर रोंदा मरा ने तो एनो रोंदा मरा बा तोरी मेंगी आमा ओडले महान जेन ओडा वळवळ होना एंगे आमा इलो मन को तो ओडा वळवळ होना एंगे ने आवळ ओडा जेने राहम गेनस्किन ओडा बेन रंगला यही कोरोना नाव कंदतन Nyar, awon deke ko mi haya ko heriga tangko ko ama hede na wa. Deko molen no anta wa. Pradhan jian das ko da. Limayam baram bichki awon me masakke kura gota miharo ko din se kon das kura. Jedweri kamal. Awon wara ufai. Nimasa to ala. Parad masli hagi ko ami kana ka ye ki ya ware ware musara ben mo sida ai. Asli hagi ko. Eko amitara adewni ma awon siteri mi adewni wara rangal ta. Wara rangal masakata ka. Enwan. E awon me marwan bara mi kai masakati ke baari on kiya rangal kam.
Hi. Thank you so much to Ross and for everyone at INTBAU for that lovely introduction and for having me up here. It's such a pleasure and an honour to be able to speak among such great names in architecture. I guess I just wanted to start off by explaining how I got into this rabbit hole. And it was really to do with my placement last year, where I got the chance to work with a historian and an architect back home in the Maldives, whose name is Maruf Jamil. And I got to work on a conservation project in one of the biggest traditional mosques back home. And it was the first time that I had actually stepped foot in one of those, which was a real shame to begin with, but it was only sort of during this project that I realized the beauty of these structures. And it's not all in the ornamentation, because it was then that it was revealed to me that all of these structures were standing up simply by really simple lock and key or tongue and groove joints between the blocks. So there's nothing essentially between the blocks like mortar or cement. And I thought it was really astounding, and I thought it was, just really shameful that we didn't know about it. And as a Maldivian architecture student, I felt a sense of responsibility to, learn about this, to record this, and to learn about how we can really take ownership of this piece of history that we have. So this mosque, which is called the Kalwakar Miski, is in the capital of the Maldives, and it's also known colloquially as the traveling mosque, or the mosque with no father. And the reason for that being that it's moved several times over history. So it was constructed in 1789, deconstructed in the 1940s or 50s, and then reconstructed in a different place in the 1980s, and then deconstructed in 2014, and then reconstructed again in 2019. So you can see that, this mosque's been moving everywhere, mosque with no father. But the reason it's been able to do this is because of these joinery techniques. So I find this mosque almost symbolic of my entire project, because one, it's only able to move because of these joinery techniques, and two, because of the reconstruction, there's an entirely new generation of people being taught, or people learning about these techniques and actually expanding this knowledge. So one of the people who worked on the project was the lovely man that you saw on the video, whose name is Alibe. And there were so many other people who actually relearned these techniques that we've had, in the past, but we've just forgotten about. And although I think it's really great that we are relearning it, I think we need to take it a step further and really do much more in order to take ownership of this piece of history. So I don't think it's enough to just learn about it. I don't think it's enough to just record it. I do think that we need to learn about how and why, or how will people actually be using this nowadays? How can we actually implement this or apply this to what we're building now? And I'm really struggling with that in my research, to be completely honest. But I think that's where the answers lie, and that's where we can really start to turn this around and use these technologies in order to value this piece of history and piece of culture that we have. So this is the ceiling of the Grand Friday Mosque, and it's almost the most articulate and most refined expression of what and where this joinery techniques can take us. And I think we can do so much more with the technology that we have today. It just requires a bit of exploration and a bit of learning from our side, a bit of humility, if you will. And I think unless we do that, there are customs, and it's not just this, it's not just the Maldives, there are customs and traditions of building that's being lost all over the world, and it's just a real, great threat that we've been faced with, I think. So that's that. Yeah, thank you.
Stand there, that's fine. Hello everyone. Thank you, Emma, that was fascinating. I have a couple of questions, and then we'll move to questions from the audience and then online. So I wondered, have you found local appetite at the sort of government level, or obviously the local craftspeople are dwindling in number, and what has it been like in your research so far?
So in terms of the government, I do think that, they are keen to actually engage in this, but I don't think it's enough so unless I think we've got more local people involved and more people who want to champion this and who want to take initiative and actually take charge of this. I don't think it's enough that, just the people at the top are willing to do this. Kind of what Irshad was saying, we need to engage with the community in order to actually have change at all levels.
Yeah. Great. And then the structural aspect is fascinating. Have you had a chance, I know because you're also studying architecture at Bath University, so pretty busy, to look at the parallels perhaps in different types of traditional joinery across the globe, so looking at the dugong joint in China, or sort of post that's used, and have you found any sort of similarities or differences, just out of interest?
So I think we've got really I thought looking at this initially that, there's lots of different types of joints and I'm never going to be able to document all of them. But actually it's really simple. Almost all of them are just lock and key or tongue and groove. They're all really simple joints. But I do think structurally there are limitations in terms of sort of lateral forces. In terms of cross-cultural mergings. I haven't had the chance to explore it that much, but I do know, just looking at it and just by the feel of it, that there is definitely something there with sort of traditional Japanese or Chinese joinery. So yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
And we're hoping that the idea is that Bath University might be able to support future research into that use of the structural hybridity, looking at stone and timber together, which is really interesting. So any questions from the audience for Ema? Thanks. Yes, just one there.
Hello there. Yes, these joinery techniques, are they a part of a wider tradition of timber and stone building in the Maldives, or are they exclusive to mosques?
So because we didn't have a lot of natural materials to build with, we kind of reserved the mosques for our most important buildings, mosques obviously taking precedence. So most of traditional dwellings are made of thatch and coconut timber. So it's not exactly the same, but there are, all of those were also sort of post and beam with some amount of joints in them. However, these are sort of where they're most principally used. But yeah. Anyone else?
Oh no, I think there was somebody.
There's one at the front. Yeah.
Thanks, Ema. I was wondering, so you said 1980 was the previous reconstruction, and then 2019. So there must have been some living memories still of people who'd worked on the 1980 reconstruction to this one, but what have been the reasons for the reconstructions, and might there be another one whilst some that learned on this rebuild will still be practicing and able to help and teach the next?
So without sort of taking up too much time, the reasons for the deconstructions were all rather silly. So the latest reason was because the mosque was next to a park which was being redeveloped, and they wanted to build an ice park where the mosque was. Mind you, this is the Maldives, so I don't really know why we need an ice park in the first place, let alone get rid of a mosque to build one. But that was, and the time before that was some other similar reason, some silly reason, really. So it's a wonder in itself that the mosque has actually managed to make it through all of these ordeals, and live through them and be put back together, with most of its original structure intact. But yeah.
Thank you. It's very interesting. What impact will these studies have on things like the development of Mali, which I think is now turning into a global stereotype?
That's a tough one. So because Mali, let me actually go back to my first slide to give some context. So as you can see, it's quite, densely populated, and that's like a nicer part of Mali, I would say. So it's really densely populated, quite similar to a lot of other cities in the global south, where high-rise concrete dwellings are favored over everything else just because they're easier to build, and just because we need, I guess, like new development. It's a tough question. I hope that there would be some form of impact, some form of, embracing the traditional and embracing the heritage. But because of the structural limitations of such techniques, I'm not sure at this moment in time exactly how it would impact the development itself. But I'm hoping in terms of, revitalizing or reigniting a passion for the traditional and for our heritage, really, I'm hoping they would do a lot. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Emi. So nice. And so this is my question you're waiting for. No, so you were saying that recording this wonderful heritage and understanding how it works and knowing how to do it, it's not enough, and you want to go further. And so let me ask you a question. So do you think, and I think that's a question which is kind of relevant not only for developing countries or for exotic places, but also for England or for Europe. So even if we know how to do things and how they were, what is the incentive to continue? It's not enough to say it's a tradition, but what are really the incentives, the moral, philosophical, intellectual incentives, and to kind of really encourage us and motivate us, and especially younger generations, to think that this tradition is something relevant for the future, which kind of allows us to keep this planet inhabitable. So, and do you have like a solution for that?
Well, I don't think that's a question that can be answered in one direct answer. But I do think that, I guess, like the reason why why do we need to keep this alive? Why do we actually need to preserve this? Is one to do with identity. Back in Mali, there's only 3 mosques of this sort that are still remaining, and there's no traditional dwellings in Mali at all. So tradition by itself has just died out already. So the reason I think it's not enough to just learn about this and document this is because, the people here in this conference and people like us would be interested in that. But other people aren't necessarily going to, go out of their way to learn about this unless there's an actual use. And that comes down to, why would people do this, right? And that incentive. And I don't know how to answer that, but I hope there is an answer. I was hoping you would.
No, I don't have the answer, but interestingly, in the morning we were talking about Marina and Anupama and Yasmeen's work, and a lot of it is about, these quite geographical and climate-related situations that force people to have to migrate and actually move buildings.
Yeah.
So Marina's example is that example, and I wonder if an interpretation or response could be to, the fact that the joinery is so relevant and he rebuilt it, and that is the thing, and not looking at almost the intersectionality of looking at identity and climate and heritage, and I think that's where we should kind of be heading. If that's helpful.
No, I think that's really relevant, especially the Maldives is similar to Bangladesh, where we're very low-lying, small islands, very threatened. So in terms of, what could come in the next, few years, and what would we have to face in terms of disasters that maybe we haven't faced before. But I feel like, the portability of this, and the fact that it comes from our heritage, there is something there. I haven't quite grasped what it is, but I do think that the answer, like you said, lies within that intersectionality. But yes.
Ema, I know you intend to take this further, don't you, this research? You intend to take the research further. You've got your department at Bath are very interested in this, and you are probably going to do some wonderful CAD drawings of how all these intersections work. It just takes me back to some of the earlier speakers we've had who've relied on glue technology, for example, and folding of planes. There's something rather wonderful about the fact how these joints go together, and surely something more 21st century can come out of that. And I think you're very well placed with a particularly engineering-related Department of Architecture. You can actually do a lot more, and I'm actually really excited about how you actually progress this in terms of diagrams and solutions for the future about portability, deconstruction, etc., because I actually think there's a lot more sustainability about some of the things you've been exploring than maybe some of the other things we've heard about in terms of how these buildings have been able to be moved. They're demonstrably movable. Yeah. Even in their masonry, which is extraordinary. I mean, how many English buildings, cathedrals, can be moved that easily? There are not that many. So I think actually there's a long way to go here, and I think there's an incredible journey you can take. And I know you're very excited to do it. So I think it's actually something that's very, very relevant, your research. So I'd ask you just keep on going, if you don't mind.
Thank you. This has become a discussion and getting ideas for how to go from here, actually.
I want to feedback on, you said there is no traditional, if I understood what you said, no traditional housing or simple or vernacular which remained. There was probably some which has been eaten up by modern urbanization. So I think that's also some research kind of field to kind of look what has been around. And then there's also something very interesting, and I think because sometimes people think tradition is something which has been there before, but tradition is something, and I think it has been mentioned it's memory, but it's also invention, it's kind of imagination, forward looking, and it's something which is kind of evolving. And there are places, and there are places in the world where there have actually been no tradition, really. There are places which have been empty of tradition, like, for example, North America. There are places there haven't, or at least there has not been a recorded tradition because it has been erased by the colonization. And there are some places where new urbanist towns, and they kind of start importing traditions which come from similar kind of cultural, geographical, climate, so where it could fit, it could be adjusted. So I think that's also something, a field of research which would be quite fascinating, where you could also merge the intelligence from monumental, from religious architecture, and kind of adapt it to kind of vernacular, more housing and so on.
Yeah, I think the idea is that, I guess, because previously when these mosques were built, hundreds of years ago, we didn't have the resources, we didn't have the technology to actually use this at a wide scale. So obviously it was only the privileged buildings that got to be used for these things. But I think now, like everyone's really been alluding to, there's something about sustainability there. There's something about sort of cross-cultural relationships. And how can we sort of use this now? Where are these techniques, meant to be applied, or where are they best applied? Is the question, I guess, which is the next phase of my research project, which I really need to get into. But it's been really fruitful to have this discussion with everyone. I got a lot of ideas as well, more than questions, I guess. But yeah.
Thank you. I think we're going to wrap up for lunch now. I'm so sorry, but by all means find Ema in the break. So thanks everyone. Thank you online for watching, and we'll be back shortly. Thanks.